in West Asia, and speaking alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Biden said it appeared that Tuesday's deadly blast at a Gaza hospital that has killed 500 people was done by the other team and not you. So clearly taking a position of support for the Israeli government and echoing Israeli assertions that the bombing was caused by an Islamic Jihad rocket that was misfired. However, Palestinian officials have blamed Israel for the deadly strike that has killed 500 people at that hospital. This took place just ahead of President Biden's much anticipated visit to Israel, which was thought to bring possibly negotiate some sort of cessation of violence and a peace deal between the two sides. That looks far-fetched at the moment, with lots of cross and counter claims about that deadly attack on the Gaza hospital. And conditions are dire for over 2 million people caught in this escalating crisis that has now trapped Gaza. Those on the ground warn that there is nowhere safe to go. Will there be a ground assault? That's the other question. Can the Middle East come together to have some sort of negotiation between the warring sides? Remember, President Biden was also supposed to meet neighbors and other Arab nations in Jordan. That was called off at the last moment. This is a major setback to America's push for diplomacy between Israel and Hamas as well. The situation in Gaza is spiraling out of control, according to the World Health Organization. In a post on X, formerly known as Twitter, the WHO has said the supplies are running short. For the last 4 days, thousands and hundreds of people have been stuck at various border points waiting for the access to open. That's another point that Americans are trying to negotiate, a safe passage, a humanitarian corridor possibly out of Gaza. But there's been absolutely no let-up in the airstrikes by Israel, and there has been absolutely no let-up in the violence on either side. Hamas, of course, has said that it has about 199 hostages. They even released videos to show that the hostages were safe as a bargaining tool, possibly for further talks in this. The Hamas, Israel claims, will be crushed with the airstrikes and going forward with subsequent decisions that the Israeli government takes. What is it that Joe Biden can bring to the table, and what is it that he can negotiate in this region? Those are the big questions. This is a massive security risk for President Biden being here. It's also a major political risk for President Biden. Remember, his opponents in Capitol Hill, led by Donald Trump, have said that Joe Biden has failed the region and that this war wouldn't have happened if it was under Donald Trump's watch. So clearly a very high stake, an extraordinary high stake trip, as it were, by the US President Joe Biden to Israel. And of course, the number of killed is only mounting in this region. On the last count, there were over 2,800 deaths on both sides. There have been visuals of horrifying videos of violence, of death, of children being killed, particularly those images that came out from the border region of Israel in kibbutz, where children, babies were killed, families were shot dead, tortured, women raped, as Israel claims. On the other side, of course, in Gaza, a massive humanitarian crisis is unfolding with thousands and millions, in fact, about 2 million people live in Gaza, out of which at least 1 million people are trying to flee to the border regions to escape the imminent ground assault, as it were, as Israel has warned several times in the last 3 days. And the borders in Rafah are shut. The other borders at the Gaza, in Gaza have also been shut, and there's been no absolutely let up. There's been no access point that has been open to people who want to leave, and these, of course, being civilians. Siddhant Sibal is on the ground, is joining us more for the very latest on this. Siddhant, the US President has arrived in Israel, and he's shown clear support there for Israel, saying that the number of deaths in that hospital and that bombing, Israel was not responsible for it. It was possibly the Islamic Jihad group.
Well, a strong stance by the U.S. President towards Israel. He's here in Tel Aviv, where we are, and essentially a strong show of support and solidarity. He met the Israeli war cabinet just a short while ago, and standing alongside the Israeli Prime Minister, he said that we are with you today, tomorrow, and this is a word that, of course, shows Washington's support for Israel at a time when the country is facing this worst terror crisis. Almost like 1,400 Israelis have died, and almost 200 of them have been taken hostages. We've spoken to many families whose loved ones are taken hostages, and they have expressed their concerns, worry, and hopes that this visit will see some kind of breakthrough.
Right, absolutely, that hopefully this will show some sort of negotiation taking place, but that looks quite tough at the moment. You know, there were many hopes that, you know, the US Secretary of State had been in this region for a week. He was talking to other Arab nations. He was possibly negotiating several, back-end deals. But this particular attack, where 500 people have been killed, has really sullied the mood. The Arab nations are refusing to even meet President Biden. So it's going to be an extremely uphill task going forward for President Biden and his team.
Well, essentially, the U.S. President Joe Biden today made those remarks, saying that he believed that the explosion in the Gaza hospital was done by the other team. That clearly indicates that someone in Gaza was responsible. Now, the Israelis have said that it was the Islamic Jihad that was responsible. It was a failed attempt to fire rockets towards Israel. And this is the new normal here. The rockets have been regularly fired towards Israel, towards Tel Aviv, where we are standing. And essentially, the Iron Dome has been working. But in Gaza, this explosion has led to a further humanitarian situation. And immediately after that explosion, we saw spontaneous protests in many of the capitals, the Arab capitals here in the region. Israel was quick to issue an alert for its citizens as well, including saying that its citizens in Turkey should be on high alert. So there is increased worry. This entire region looks like a haystack, and any incident can lead to a wider problems. But there are American assets in the region, and that is another way by which Washington has been showcasing its support to Tel Aviv at a time when there are, of course, a lot of worries in the region. Now, we know that the American U.S. Secretary of State, he was on a shuttle diplomacy in the region. He was here in Tel Aviv twice. He was in other Arab capitals, and he was hoping that there will be a resolution. But with the explosion of the hospital in Gaza, there are worries that this could lead to further escalation in the region. The people I have spoken to here on the ground have said that they expect strong reaction by the Netanyahu government against Hamas in Gaza. But there is the other angle, that is the humanitarian angle. Many of the people here in Israel have said that they see Hamas as a terror group, and some of them have expressed their sympathies as well with the Palestinian people as to what they have been going through, pointing out that this is primarily because of Hamas. But essentially, today is a day where a lot of activities are taking place here in Tel Aviv, and with the visit of the U.S. President, of course, we will see some kind of increased diplomacy by the American side, especially with the Israeli side, now that the second leg of the tour, that's the visit to Jordan, has been cancelled. Because remember, immediately after the Gaza hospital explosion, the Jordanian leadership announced that there will be cancellation of the meetings which was expected to happen, and the US president, of course, will be traveling back. So let's see what is in store for next 24 to 48 hours. Will there be a ground offensive, or whether there will be a de-escalation in the situation?
Yeah, Siddhant, that's the big question really there. What's going to happen in the next 24 hours, even as President Biden has arrived in Israel? Thanks very much indeed for joining us with the latest.